Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Monday, January 20th. I'll do my introduction or whatever voiceover thing later if I do one. And so this was a memory Facebook shared. Liberté, egalite, fraternité. Um, Pockets of Future YouTube. So I made this meme years ago. Um, this was when uh, there was some kind of an event that happened in France that looked pretty bogus. I'm not sure what happened. Was Ariana Grande, was that her thing? I don't know. It was so many years ago. But France was known for open borders, and they were having issues with Muslims coming to their country from various other countries in the Middle East. You know, I showed you these. I had some pictures of this of the, uh, you know, the way that these wars that America was waging, especially in Syria, the last one, and it was just forcing these people to migrate. And France was the open border place, and they were struggling with it. You know, I went there in 2005. I flew through there, and I couldn't believe the security they had. Like I flew out of Washington D.C., and it was, just 4 years after the big event in 2001, right? So America was still reeling from that and all those wars that happened afterwards. And I went through the security at Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C., and it was relatively mild compared to what I went through in France. Like, we got off the plane, and they, it was like one of those things where we had to exit the plane onto a tarmac, and we went into a holding facility. And there were a lot of people, women in like head coverings, they were, foreigners, Muslim people, and things like this. And they just started yelling at us in French. And there's babies crying. And we were just sitting there for like an hour. I had a 2 hour layover. And we were sitting there for like, and I was like, I'm going to miss my flight. Everything was in French. I didn't speak French. And I couldn't believe the security. Then there's all these guys with machine guns in the airport. And we went through the first like checkpoint. And there's like 3 checkpoints we had to go through. And they had to literally run to my plane, right? Like, it was just, it was one of the things where I had to like urinate, like I had to get when I got off the plane. And I didn't have time to go to the bathroom. I had to run to my plane because it was already boarding. And it was just a bizarre thing. So, I made this meme because of the way they were acting there. It was going against these are their three big words that they use for, liberty, equality, and fraternity, brotherhood. And they have this, you know, um, this was France looked like. But the reason I'm saying this is YouTube recommended this. They said share a memory, and I was like, what? This is not YouTube, Facebook. Now Facebook, all of a sudden, all these old truther people are showing up on my feed. I scrolled down the other day. I had all these truther people that were censored. They were like they conducted their truther business on Facebook. They had some sort of following there, and they couldn't post anything because of censorship. Now Zuckerberg has gone the other way, and so all of a sudden all this stuff is becoming something different. Now, my last video, I read you some of the comments that YouTube's own bots were shitting on YouTube, right? So this is where we are right now. Trump is being sworn in. And again, today's Monday, January 20th. Trump's being sworn in. Last night there was a big gay law, and I'll cover a little bit of that here. I'm a little bit behind the days because I have 2 videos waiting to be. I'll make one video public and another one tomorrow. So, it's going to be probably this will be up on Wednesday, and then I'll cover the little bit of the inauguration today. But things have shifted, but they can shift back, right? But all of a sudden, there's I mean, this is something Facebook is, probably wasn't happy I posted back then, but now they're recommending it. Like I didn't post that much of my personal thing. I don't have many posts there. I don't post stuff there. But it was a throwback thing. Anyways, let's get into some of this other stuff here. What's happening? He's doing his thing where it's like he has a string on a hoodie and he pulls it back and forth.
Young man, there's no need to feel down. I said, young man, pick yourself off the ground. I said, young man, cause you're in the town. There's no need to be.
This is so bizarre because the Village People, they're gay. I mean, I assume they were. That's what everybody has said for years. I don't know them personally. We don't know them personally. Like, you don't know the names of any of the Village People. Like, this is kind of a band. It's kind of not. I mean, I don't know if they play instruments. It's more like it was a bizarre song. Had that two thing, YMCA, and these other things, right? But, these guys must be in their 70s or something, right?
Young man, there's a place you can go. I said, young man, when you're short on your dough, you can stay there. And I'm sure you will find many ways to have a good time. Come on, everybody. It's fun to stay at the YMCA.
It's not fun to stay at the YMCA. I mean, the whole point of the song, like, these are like, you're a young person traveling and you don't have enough money for a hotel. Maybe you're running away from home. I mean, like, there's no good things going on here when you're staying at the YMCA, right? These, like, hostels.
Fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for your men to enjoy.
How has this become his fucking theme song? Like, how is this, how is this even a thing?
You can hang out with all the boys. Fun to stay at the YMCA. Fun to stay at the YMCA. You can get yourself clean. Have a good meal.
Yeah, that guy's definitely gay.
Do what you love, you feel. Young man, are you listening to me? I said, young man, what do you want to be? Young man, you can make million dreams.
This is like the feel-good song of Trump's campaign. This is his theme. This bizarre song about staying at the YMCA by 5 old gay dudes. I mean, this is from the 70s. Dressed inappropriately. This is cultural appropriation because none of these guys are what they're dressed as. The cowboy's not a cowboy. The construction worker's not a construction worker. That guy's not Native American. That guy's not a cop.
Know this one thing.
That guy is whatever he is here, though.
No man does it all by himself. I said, young man, put your pride on the shelf. Just
Soldier.
go there to the YMCA. I'm sure they can help you today. All right, everybody. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA.
He's singing. Trump singing.
They have everything for your men to enjoy. You can hang out with all the boys. Fun to
You can hang out with all the boys. You can hang out with all the boys at the YMCA.
stay at the YMCA. Fun to stay at the YMCA. You can get yourself clean. Have a good meal.
You can get yourself clean. Does that mean that you're coming off of smack, right? Or you're just dirty in general? Get yourself a meal.
Do what you like, you feel. Young man, I was once in your shoes. I said I was down and out with the blues. I felt no man. Dead if I were alive. I felt the whole world.
Okay, so what's happening with this? All right, how long is this going on?
Yourself off the ground.
It's like 5 minutes long, this thing. Oh, here he is. They have to go say goodbye to Trump here. Look, they're all waving. There they are, holding hands. I'll hold hands. Do a little bow. Okay. Just milk this moment forever. There we go. They had no problem performing for Trump. He's shaking all the guy's hands. He just saluted him. Oh, aren't they wonderful? So there's that. Trumps. Okay, so these were the original Village People performing at the Trump Gala. It says here that the Village People refers to Manhattan's Greenwich Village, which is reputation as a gay neighborhood. The characters were a symbolic group of Americans' masculinity. The Village People, Muriel, who was an openly gay, had always wanted to create a musical group for his community. Inspired by these men in their macho drag, he added 4 other gay fantasy figures to the group and called them the Village People. The group never explicitly identified as gay, but their first album, it goes on to say more things here. And somebody covering this on TikTok. So this is the characters. The character symbolic a group of American masculinity and macho gay fantasy personas. And they appeared on the Trump inauguration gala. This is his whole thing. And it was the song of 2025, and they've made a comeback. And they are Trumpers apparently now because they want to be famous and they want to, capitalize on this moment, right? So some more weird shit was happening here.
And then you had Oprah herself. Oprah, she'll interview you if you pay her $1 million too. Yeah, so low fee of $1 million to sit down with Oprah Winfrey, apparently. That's what the Harris campaign paid her production company, she says. And for that, you know what you get? You get Oprah yelling at you. Kamala Harris! Why are you doing that? So calm down, madam. Didn't work out for her either. But of course, the fakest person involved on that side of the aisle was the woman at the top, Kamala Harris herself.
Wow, you're still going after this thing, right?
Thank you. Who pretended that she wasn't the border czar, who pretended that she was middle class, who pretended that she was smart. And the American people did not buy it. Every time you turned around this woman.
Megyn Kelly mercilessly mocks Kamala, imitates Oprah as she celebrates Trump's victory. So she was there last night, but I remember a time where Megyn Kelly and Trump didn't get along so well. It was only 5 years ago. So this is from the 2016 debate.
One of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account...
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't.
Look at the audience here.
Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part
Well, we all know how that worked out.
of the war on women?
I think the big problem...
These were legitimate questions, right? These are things that a president shouldn't do. Like, I liked it because a president totally should be doing stuff like that.
this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either This country is in big trouble.
It's in big trouble.
We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in
We're
trade
not winners. And he's such a winner. He's been bankrupt 6 times, right?
and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time. What I say is what I say. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that.
You know, there's legitimate questions. These are legitimate questions here. Now, this is a Republican debate.
But you know what? We need strength. We need energy. We need quick.
Okay, so, and he was very upset about this debate. So she was representing the traditional Republicans, right? And he didn't like the way she asked the real questions, and he carried a grudge with him. So this is what Trump said afterwards.
Donald, the fact is she asked me a very inappropriate question. She should really be apologizing to me. You want to know the truth.
You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. I said,
Wherever.
You know, how much of this do you take? I have zero respect for Megyn Kelly. I don't think she's very good at what she does. I think she's
Highly
overrated.
Highly overrated.
Trump, who is the front runner, will not apologize.
And so this, a bunch of things happened. Megyn Kelly was out at Fox News. She was part of a lawsuit. They made a movie about it called Bombshell, remember? All the sexual inappropriate stuff that was happening over Fox News. And then she was recruited by MSNBC. This is, shortly after all these things. MSNBC was trying to turn Republicans, right? They did it with Marcia Wallace, who was one of John McCain's people. They did it with Morning Joe. They did it with that guy who used to be the RNC director that's on Morning Joe all the time. They had a little dust up. And they tried to do it with Megyn Kelly, but it didn't work out, right? Megyn Kelly had that hit piece she did at Alex Jones, who walked right into it and, did his Alex Jones stuff. And, she tried to be a liberal for a little bit. And now she's got her own little podcast. She walked away with a lot of money from MSNBC. They had to buy her out because her ratings, she had her own show, but it sucked, like all the rest of them. And now she's back in Trump's camp, right? Or in Trump's camp, because she wasn't in Trump's camp at all. Trump hated her. That was that blood comment that was pretty, utilized by Hillary Clinton to no avail. And now Megyn Kelly's celebrating Donald Trump's victory. So that's the arc of what's happened, right? And she's gone kind of almost a little bit right-wing truther. Megyn Kelly has, following Tucker Carlson. So she went from Fox News, mainstream Republican, trying to take down Donald Trump for the mainstream Republicans, which we know is destined to fail. Then she took a shot at being a reformed Republican on MSNBC, liberal, semi-liberal, whatever, Democrat type of person, and that failed. And then she had all this money and no place to go, kind of like Don Lemon's, and now she has her own kind of YouTube situation and has a lot of truther stuff. And she's in Donald Trump's good graces, appearing at his big event with the Village People. I don't know where she ranked in terms of, I think the Village People got more, a better slot than she did. But, Trump is bringing all these people that used to be Trump haters. J.D. Vance, a lot of people who criticize Trump. Trump will always take you back if you bow down and kiss his ring and never criticize him again. And that's what Megyn Kelly's done. So this guy just said Mark Zuckerberg's going to be at the inauguration as a guest of Donald Trump. And Steve Bannon's having none of it.
I interviewed you just hours before you went into prison. And now we're sitting here again together just hours before Trump's going to be sworn in.
If I remember correctly, we talked...
The hairdo, it's just really working for him. He could be a village person. He could be the macho, grumpy Republican.
At least before...
Overweight one.
Afterwards about how we were going to win this.
Right? You were quite confident.
Very confident.
So he's going to go out there. It's the second inaugural. I
want to get the thing about here where he says the stuff about Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know where there's something here it says about Zuckerberg. Here.
Last time. Are you surprised to see that?
I am not. They're there as supplicants. They're not there as the oligarchs. Remember what Biden said about the oligarchs. Jonathan, you know better than anybody because you've chronicled this in detail. We had no power. President Trump was out. And I mean, when out, the political class in the Republican Party and Fox News turned against him. We're going to make him a non-person.
He was banned from their platforms.
Banned from their platforms.
For, I think, 18 months. But as soon as Zuckerberg said,
He was banned from their platforms.
I've been invited and I'm going, the floodgates opened up and they were all there knocking, trying to be supplicants. So I look at this, and I think most people in our movement look at this as President Trump broke the oligarchs. He broke them, and they surrendered. They come and say, oh, we'll take off any constraints. There'll be no more checkings, everything. And when Biden talks about that, they create the oligarchs. They only became oligarchs, and they flipped on them when they had surrendered, and now they're going to come to Trump saying, I view this as September of 1945, the Missouri, and you have the Imperial High Command.
This guy.
Imperial Japanese.
And he's like Douglas MacArthur.
He's like Douglas MacArthur, that guy. Remember when he called you Sloppy Steve? You guys got into it, and he called you Sloppy Steve, and then you went to jail? Sloppy Steve, remember?
That is an official...
Like Sloppy Steve is like some kind of derogatory term. I think it's a sexual term or something in the Urban Dictionary. Like it's some kind of thing. A Sloppy Steve.
Surrender, okay? And I think it's powerful.
Mark Zuckerberg is there. Do you believe his conversion?
Absolutely not. I think Mark Zuckerberg's a criminal. I think in a properly adjudicated... Yes, for 2020. For the Zuckerbucks. But I want to see...
For the Zuckerbucks.
I want to see that in a systematic...
All right, so this guy. Even this guy's getting a second run. They're opening everything back up. And so hopefully YouTube will follow in suit, and then YouTube will go back to where it was, and, things like that. I don't know how that's going to be. It's almost like, the way that I feel about it is in terms of, it's sort of like jump the shark, all this social media. Like, it's like they want you back now, then they censored you and they fucked you over. And not just truthers and Republicans and people, but everyone in general. Like there's just this, Trump didn't win by that much. I mean, in terms of what you think about the 2020 election, it isn't like it was an overwhelming landslide. He won all the swing states, but it's not even, did he actually win the popular vote, are they saying, or whatever? So she got 75 million votes. He got 77, right? Which leads you to believe there's no way Biden got 80 million. There's just there's no way. I mean, how did, with this, whatever it was. And so, but it's only a couple million votes different. So it's not really it's not a landslide. And it's Kamala Harris, one of the worst candidates. And yet there's this wave of Trumpism sweeping across America. But they can, they've always opened things up, and then they invite you in, and then they stab you in the back. They blame you, or they're setting you up, right? Like this is, and it's hard to embrace the social media giants after they pulled all that shit. And some of it, you can say, all right, they were forced to, which, like I said all along, their business model is best when they don't censor at all. They have, free speech across the board. And everybody could find their own little group on the social media platforms. And so, I understand why they're doing that now, but, it's like kind of like a thing of yeah, all right, Facebook, whatever. There's no enthusiasm, like it's all kind of jumped the shark, as has Trump, right? Because, Trump's going to have his moment in the sun, but then things are going to get shitty because, there's real problems and real, calamities, that's going to befall America, and he has no answers. So there's this time of a period of opening back up, and I don't know how long it will last. But if they've closed things down before, We know what they did with COVID. You know, there might be a rejection of the medical community. Apparently, there's been some news. Let me go to that. I'm editing, and I just want to add this. So there is 346 million Americans. So basically, there's 200 million Americans, slightly less than 200 million Americans, that didn't vote. 150 something, 53 or whatever it is, that did vote. So the majority of people didn't even vote. 70 million of those, 73 million of those are children under the age of 18. Of course, they matter in terms of the future and these things, right? So even if you got all the votes, you still don't even have a majority of Americans, right? The majority of Americans can't be bothered to vote, or people like me who think voting is useless. And so democracy can't work if half the population isn't voting, more than half the population. I mean, the youth are the youth, right? So, but there was almost, there's 110 million adults who didn't vote, right? That's a third of the population. That's close to a third. That's a third of the population didn't vote. So you don't have any kind of majority, right? You have all the people voted against you, and then you have all the people who didn't vote. It's certainly not a mandate of Americans saying this is the guy, right? The majority of people aren't even participating in the system. They're not voting. I mean, I'm one of them, right? So it's not a mandate, right? Like if he was that great, why wouldn't they get an overwhelming turnout, like something like 70% or something, which they didn't. Anyways. So in his final moments, Joe Biden pardons Liz Cheney, Fauci, and Milley to thwart reprisals. So he pardoned all these people because he thought Trump was going to try to get revenge against them, right? But Trump in the past, as much as he hated Hillary Clinton, didn't go after her. Like, he talks about things, but like, look at all these people who are sloppy Steve Bannon. He got into it, and now they're talking again. And Megyn Kelly, who, I mean, he was really hated her, and now she's invited to his inauguration. And all these people who banned him on social media. And so Fauci, you know, what did he do that I mean, he's a criminal. You pardon criminals, right? You don't pardon people that are going to be, you haven't done anything. And he's saying, well, Trump's going to get revenge on him, but there's no evidence that Trump's even going to be about that. Like, he's happy he won. And, maybe there's some element of that. We'll see if Trump goes after people. But he pardoned these people. If it was it was a good thing to do, why did he wait till the last fucking day? Why did Biden wait till the last day? And then, this bullshit excuse. He gave his son a weird pardon that was like 11 years and 23 days and 15 minutes, right? To like some event that, back in when the Burisma Ukrainian stuff was happening. And, his son was obviously a criminal because he was being investigated as a criminal. We know Fauci was in it with Big Pharma. And in a sense, he's pardoning Big Pharma. And because if Fauci's trial came up, Big Pharma would take a beating. And Trump isn't going to go against Big Pharma. We'll see what happens with RFK Jr. as health director and all those things. But, if it was a above board thing, there's the last minute pardons where, it's like your last day of work and you steal a bunch of stuff or something, right? Like out the door, whatever, whatever it is, right? You have all those things. And so you take as much stuff as you could or something, right? You do something on your last day of work, you're fucking off, you're not doing your job. And, there's going to be no reprisal. No one can say anything to you because you're not going to be there the next day. And so, like, this is what he's doing, right? Like, he's putting out these pardons and then leaving, and everyone's going to be focused on Trump. And, this is limited news. This is like a little, he really shits on Trump's inauguration a little bit. And so there's that. Grateful for the pardon. Dr. Factory reacts to Biden's preemptive pardon.
As we continue this conversation, guys, we mentioned these pardons offered by President Biden this morning. General Milley has accepted the pardon, and now Dr. Anthony Fauci in a statement says he is grateful for the pardon he received from President Biden. He just received word from his attorney this morning the pardon had gone through. He says, quote, "It feels good, and I'm grateful to the president for doing it." Also,
it feels good. That pardon feels good.
Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, who many of us have come to know, who heroically defended the Capitol on January 6th and became an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, even ran for office. He now says, "I am eternally grateful to President Joe Biden, not just for the preemptive pardon, but for the leadership and service to this."
Preemptive pardon. Okay, just in case you want to commit some crimes or you committed some crimes we don't know about, let's preemptively pardon you, even though you're not charged with anything criminal. But we know you did some criminal shit.
Nation. He goes on to say that, like all public servants, I was just doing my job and upholding my oath.
See, Joe Biden is going to be, he's senile and he's going to fall apart now. And he's going to disappear completely. And no one's going to, if they talk to him, he'll be babbling. He won't have a team of people around him anymore. He's kind of going out in disgrace. The Democratic Party is, in free fall. And he's a failed president. Most people view him as that. And so this is a dick move by a guy who's not only retiring, but retiring. Like, he's just not going to be a part of anything, right? Like, he's, he'll be hidden away and he'll be in obscurity with that whatever millions he got from his son Hunter and their schemes. And so, this is a big, not only a fuck you move to Trump, but also to America and the Democratic Party, because it's it's a whole thing, right? Like, it's just a dick move on his part. So Dana White was there.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon.
He's got a weird voice. Sounds almost sounds like ladies, like Jerry Lewis.
I am honored to be here to celebrate President Trump's historic victory. He didn't just win this election, he won it in dominant fashion. With record numbers of Americans from all walks of life. Not only did he win the Electoral College by 86 points, but President Trump was the first Republican candidate in 20 years to win the popular vote.
By 2 million against Kamala Harris. And so it's not a sweep across the nation. It's barely, I wonder what percentage that is. We'll look at that in a moment after he's done here. But it's probably like less than 1%, right, of the vote. Like 2 million people. I don't know how many people voted. Well, it was she got 75, he got 77. So it's probably maybe 1% of the population. So he won 51%, she won 49, or less than that. Like, was like 50.5 and she was 49.5, something like that. And so it's not a landslide. And the country's divided. And the people who voted against him hate him. Or, maybe they're less so now, but, maybe they're all over the whole Biden thing and the Democratic Party, so they lost enthusiasm and faith for all that stuff. But it'll come back around when Trump starts screwing up. Like, as soon as Trump does something that, and he will, because he's Trump, and because the situation is, like, it's going to be that, right? Like, it's, things are going to happen because we're not in good shape.
He also made major gains among traditionally Democrat voters by increasing his support with Latin, Asian American, Black.
All right, so this guy. I'll do the percentage here. So I forgot about third-party candidates. Donald Trump falls below 50% in popular vote, but gets more than the past elections. It says here, President-elect Donald Trump got very close to the majority of vote in this presidential election, but not quite. It's not exactly the unprecedented and powerful mandate Trump claimed on election night. It says here that he got the closest, the fact that year's popular vote margin is the closest since 1968 and still tightening. With 96% of the vote in, Trump is, according to the Associated Press, he has 49.97 to Vice President Harris 48.36. 76 million people, which ended up being 77, and hers goes up to 75. And so he didn't even get 50% of the vote, right? Because of third-party candidates and whatever. So, again, this was before it was all counted, but it came in slimmer, this margin, because he only got this up to 77, and she got that up to 75. So there was more votes that she got at the end. But again, it's not a mandate. And there is this idea that this whole, I mean, think about the sweeping changes of what they're returning to, right? With social media and things, embracing all these. And they always wanted to do that because they all suffered. I mean, Facebook is a ghost town. And so he's trying to reclaim some of its previous glory, and all those things. But that's, not a like any kind of a justification for all these changes, because America's just as divided as it was in the last 2 elections. There's a divide in these things. And it's a swing in one way or another. But social media, like I said over and over again, they do better when there's less censorship. When people can feel free to say what they believe, then they are more likely to stay on your platform. But, YouTube and Google have a lot of freaking fixing to do, more than anybody else, because they game their search engines and algorithms to give you shit you didn't want. Now, Facebook is a lot worse than YouTube as a platform. I prefer to be on YouTube. I really don't like Facebook or any of these other platforms. But YouTube has a lot more good content on it. But they were gaming it so you couldn't find what you wanted, right? And so hopefully they, change all those algorithms. And if that happens, then, my channel can sort of get a reboot from what's been happening. But other than that, this is just it could be just a momentary change until they're forced to go back to more restrictive censorship. A couple big events will happen that'll blame on truthers or the freedom of speech and things like that, and then they'll reverse all this stuff. We'll see what happens. So here it is. I had this up for before. This is from a couple days ago.
Have you met with Donald Trump since the election?
Yeah, I had a chance to go have a long and actually quite intriguing dinner with him.
What did you discuss? What was intriguing?
Remember when you couldn't criticize Bill Gates? Like they said, you just couldn't criticize him anymore. Now here's a guy who got busted for having monopolies and just putting out a shitty product. Like when I got my Apple computer, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can never go back to Microsoft. Just the way the Apple works and just how efficient it is and not having to restart it all the time, all the Microsoft bullshit, right? But he had done some things that were, antitrust. He got all this governmental money, and they said, just don't create a monopoly, and he created a monopoly, and then the browser wars and all the bullshit that he did, right? And then this guy all of a sudden said, I'm going to be a philanthropist, even though I've been a selfish, evil businessman, an oligarch. And now all of a sudden I'm just going to make the world a better place. And, he started to push all this stuff that was you couldn't criticize. This is part of this whole thing. And, he criticized Trump, and now Trump just wants to be a part of the club. Trump wanted to be a part of the club the whole time. And now that these people have to kind of bow before him, he's forgiven all of them. As long as they come and kiss his ring or support him, now all these people are back in with Trump, and Trump's in with them, and he's happy. This is, more about why he wanted to run again than anything else.
Well, we touched on a lot of things. It was over 3 hours. To my surprise, it was, just he and I, his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and the person who helps manage things for me, Larry Cohen. So the 4 of us sat there, and it was
for
quite
3 hours.
Wide-ranging. Global health's the area that I work in, and
you can't have RFK Jr. stuff and his stuff. They don't jive, right?
Such amazing things have happened and can happen there. I spoke a lot about HIV and that the foundation's literally working on a cure for that. We're at
his foundation wants to cure it. He does. He really does.
Stage, and so he, in the COVID days, accelerated the vaccine innovation. So I, was asking him if maybe the same kind of thing could be done here, and we both...
Because he did Operation Warp Speed, right? Don't forget about that shit from Trump.
Scott, I think, pretty excited about that. We talked about polio, where, we're very close to getting that done, but if you stop, it'll spread back. And so I explained why it's been tough in Pakistan, Afghanistan. We've had cases show up in Gaza. We have cases in Africa.
Crazy. It's in Gaza for some strange reason.
And he was fascinated to hear what he could do to maximize the chance that during the next 4 years that incredible milestone will be achieved.
Yeah, and massive depopulation as well. Remember he did that thing about, the whole getting the population numbers down. The TED Talk, well, we'll revisit that.
I felt like he was, energized and, looking forward to helping to drive innovation. I was...
Innovation. He's all about innovation and making humanity better. He's not greedy and selfish and narcissistic and like heartless. He's actually an innovator about making humanity better again.
I was frankly impressed with how well he showed a lot of interest in the issues I brought up.
Boom. They all say that about Trump. He just, we've seen that, and we saw that with the two things I showed you. When he was going to get rid of all these weapons, he was going to give, whatever that woman is, Dianne Feinstein, and she had a ghoulgasm. Remember, I showed you all that stuff. I don't know if I have any of those memes. And then they gave him a talking to about the NRA. And then he came out and started talking about asset forfeiture. Of course, they made him do asset forfeiture, but he had no idea why people had a problem with it. He was just going along with what these guys were saying, like he did when they were talking about gun control. He had no idea. Like, he was a Republican, and he had no idea why Republicans and people who are, so-called patriots were against these things. And then, people told him, his handlers, and he backed off. But, he does these things all the time where he's talking to somebody and he just thinks the person's great and, the person's complimenting him. And he just endorses what the person says and then later on reverses himself. And he might do that with Gates. He might not. We don't know what he's promised him and whether he'll fulfill those promises. Okay, so remember this, Innovating to Zero, Bill Gates TED Talk.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons.
26 billion tons of carbon dioxide.
For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero.
What are those changes, Bill?
It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy.
Okay, so you can see right from this equation, if he wants this to get to zero, he's going to say this. Let's let him say it.
So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look.
So they're laughing about this about people, right? So what would they have to get down to zero? So if they have to get this down to zero, they would either have to get no people, and then there would be no services per person, and there would be no energy per service, and there would be no CO2 per unit of energy. So whatever energy that's being used, they got to get this thing down to zero here, right? So there's no, this would be the CO2, and you could have people, you could have services, you could have energy, but the energy can't produce any CO2. So that's no cars, that's none of the nuclear facilities that burn coal, electrical plants that burn coal, and all the other things that cause CO2 emissions. Whatever those, they'd have to remove all those things. So you'd either have to reduce the population, which he was laughing about, right? That's what the joke was. And then you'd have to reduce the amount of energy the people who are left could use and what type of energy it is. And people would have to live in these 15-minute cities and things like this, right? That's where all that comes from. If they're believing that this is actually going to happen. So if this was a real thing, and, we are polluting. So, there's, within the truth community, people don't believe in CO2 emissions as being a problem or climate change or any of these things, right? And I don't know. Like, I know we are polluting. I know this is, to me, the part of it that's being pushed is, the people who are doing the most damage, who are producing the most CO2, are really wealthy people living in giant mansions. We saw this with Al Gore, the people with private jets, right? All those things. All these corporations that are burning lots of carbon, creating a lot of CO2 in their plants and things. And so the average person isn't contributing nearly as much as the corporations are. And so it's big corporations, it's big money, and it's the people who run the planet. And so if they really want to get rid of it, they could. But they can't get rid of your energy because that would cause widespread issues. So reducing the population is something that's going to happen one way or another because we're at peak population. Eventually, there'll be less people being born than people are dying. They're pushing for this. It's something Bill Gates, the UN has a population award. Bill Gates was a part of that, right? And so, we'll get to another one thing at the end of this thing. And so with all these things that are happening here, you'd either have to get rid of your lifestyle here, these things, these three things, these two things, your lifestyle, to produce zero here, you have to get rid of lots and lots of people. If this is a real problem and it's a real, something that could wipe out all life on the planet, that would be something we'd have to change, right? But people aren't going to change, and they don't trust Bill Gates. They don't trust the powers that be. Lots of people don't trust them. And so that would be the issue, right? And so this is the guy Trump was talking to for 3 hours. And we don't know what Trump would promise him and what he would deliver on those, whether he deliver on those promises or not. But we know that Bill Gates is saying there's going to be another one.
There's going to be another pandemic.
Sure that we're ready because there will be another pandemic.
Another one, another one, another one. For the next pandemic, which will happen.
That last person in that meme is a woman who has got an anti-truther, anti-vaxxer website or blog. She was featured on MSNBC. So I want to see if there's any more bot comments. I haven't looked at the comments today. But there was something I saw here. The Passion of the Christ is the most important movie ever made. So, I don't know if this is ban-worthy. I have to think about it because what I'm saying is the exact opposite. And I don't mind if people disagree with me, but I don't need to hear about it because I know there are people who love the movie, and I understand that narrative. But what I'm saying here is a completely unique and different, at least in terms of some of the stuff I was saying, which is if you love Jesus, why do you want to see him tortured? Why would you want to relive that, right? So you can feel some kind of bogus sense of responsibility and guilt for something that has really nothing to do with you, because despite what you've been told in terms of your Bible, someone can't die for your sins, right? They could help you work through them. The cleaning process in the Sajmark system helps minimize the effects of your past mistakes, impressions, and scars, right? But you still have to endure responsibility for whatever you've done wrong, which, I think bears out in every other field but this one exception. But more importantly, like what I was saying, if you really love Jesus and Mel Gibson really loved Jesus, why would you want to accept that deal? Why would you want to accept a deal where you are a sinner and a piece of shit, and because of your inability to deal with your own issues and take responsibility for them, you're going to make Jesus suffer and take advantage of his suffering on your behalf? Why wouldn't you want to change? Why wouldn't you want to change so this person that you love more than anybody else, this soul, Jesus, right? The idea of your idea of Jesus, if you really loved him, wouldn't you want to not add to his suffering in some way, right? And seeing the suffering is just, it's morbid, it's sick. It's a sickness, and it's filled with all that, Catholic guilt and all the blood and all this stuff, right? The blood that's involved, the Santeria, all that stuff, the blood that's involved in these things, stigmata, right? The stigmata stuff, the him bleeding, people, other saints bleeding from their palms and things, all this stuff. The obsession with blood and the violence and the violence of the Catholic Church that had an army at one point, and all the violence that was done in the name of Jesus and saving people, all that bullshit, trying to save people who weren't going to hell. There's some made up stuff that you're using as an excuse to occupy and take people's lands and convert them and forcefully convert them to your religion because you're doing it under the guise that you're helping them out and saving them. It's just bullshit, right? That's what you should feel guilty about. Like the behavior of the Christian religion and the indoctrination of people from Scottish, Irish people, all the people of Europe. A lot of it was forced. The people were doing something, right? It's like somebody coming in now and forcing you to do something else other than Christianity and beating you and torturing you if you didn't do it. I mean, that's what was done. And saying it's because we're trying to save your soul, and that Christianity sucks, and you got it all wrong, and we're going to take all your stuff. We're going to abuse your women, and we're going to enslave you and do all these things. But we're actually saving you, so you should feel privileged for all the things you have to give to us for saving you, right? That's the bullshit Christians did, right? Like that's what you should feel bad about, these things, right? And doing it in Christ's name, putting all that shit on Jesus. Like, does he die for those sins as well? The sins that were done, with this idea of manifest destiny. Like at some point, you got to be honest with yourselves about what's going on. I guess you don't because no one has to. I mean, you should, but no one will. Anyways, let's look at the other comments here. Okay, so there's one comment here. Dude, you're a Vikings fan? That's awesome. From Minneapolis. The 70s were very difficult. They had a defensive line that involved this guy, Alan Page, and Carl Eller. I still remember I have a good memory for these things. But I was a little kid, and my first favorite football team was, I think, the Cowboys. Then it was the Vikings. I got a deck of cards on a Delta airplane, a Delta air flight, and they used to give cards out, and you play solitaire, and they would have a city, and my city was Dallas. So I liked the Cowboys for a little bit. Of course, everyone liked the Cowboys. They were America's team back then. But then somehow I started liking the Vikings, and I'm not sure why. The Purple People Eaters. But they had a lot of, where they were close to winning the Super Bowl. They never did. And then I moved on to the Bengals because I like the Cincinnati Reds. But now, I'd like to see those teams win because they never did. Like the Vikings and Bengals, they never won a Super Bowl. The Bengals, one of my friends from college liked the Bengals. And, I wasn't really into football. I wasn't much of a fan then. But, I still, whatever. And they were playing the Patriots. We were in Connecticut. And we got tickets. He got tickets to go to the game in Foxborough. And so we went up there. And my friend was dressed in Bengals attire. And New England, Massachusetts, massholes, right? My nephew he went to school. He played Division II basketball in, I think it was Division II, or he went to a junior college in Massachusetts, and he called them massholes just when I was working there. And I was like, that's a great way to describe the people of Massachusetts. Not all of them, but most of them. Good percentage. And we went there. There were some girls behind us, and they were talking shit to my friend. And I said, don't make him violate his parole. I used to say shit like that. But anyways, he got so drunk, we were leaving, and the Bengals won. And he went up to a bunch of really crazy-looking big adults, like we were college kids, Patriots fans. He goes, do you like the Bengals? Because they freaking won. He yelled it like right in their faces. They just started laughing at him. And I'm like, dude, we're going to get us killed here. But anyways, not really a fan of any team now. I mean, there are teams I like more than other teams. It's more like the way they play. I can be inspired by something if I, whatever it is. I mean, certainly Aaron Rodgers and Kyrie Irving doing their thing, being the anti-vax or whatever they were with that stuff was, that I didn't like them at first, but then I changed my opinion based on all those things. And I would say this also about, Mark Zuckerberg and these other people. I mean, they're just going with the flow and, it benefits them. I wouldn't say they're good people. But, if people change, I mean, I'm not like somebody who carries grudges and whatever. And I will change my opinion of someone if they evolve and change themselves. If I think they're on the wrong side of something, I'm critical of them. But then they change, then I will verbalize my appreciation for that, right? Whatever it is. Like just even if they're pieces of shit, they're part of the beast, which almost everybody I cover is, right? To some extent. Like there's levels of what they can do better. But anyways, dude, you're a Vikings fan? That's awesome. From Minneapolis, the 70s were very difficult. Yes, sir, I grew up in the area. I grew up in that era. Those were some rough times. Not because of the Vikings. I got to see the Vikings in Super Bowl in 1974. What a great time to be alive. And so neither of those things happened. I remember they were in the Super Bowl and lost, and so it wasn't a great time if you're a Vikings fan. That was the whole purpose of the comment. I mean, these bot things are bizarrely twisted and bad. I mean, it made stuff up. I just took a break. I took a long break. My wife and I did a bunch of things. We were running errands, it was MLK Day, it's the holiday, so we were getting a bunch of things done. But anyways, to say that I lived and went to that game, I mean, it knows nothing about me. I've never said anything like that. I didn't go. I was like 7 years old, and I lived in Connecticut. I don't know. I mean, I've been to Florida, so I left the state, but I had never been to Minnesota. I didn't have the ability, all those things. I mean, maybe I watched the game. I'm sure I watched the Super Bowl as much as, I did at that age. I mean, I watched sports. I don't know if I watched whole games or whatever, right? Like I remember bits and pieces from that time. But anyways, so there's this one too. The person writes, I've been dealing with panic attacks for most of my life. Now, if you were a bot and you heard something like that, you would realize that it's not your place to comment, right? I mean, it's a delicate thing when someone says something like that. I've been dealing with panic attacks for most of my life. I used to blame God and was very resentful since I had no idea why it was happening. But now I look at it as a possibility, as possibly being a gift, since I have learned so much about myself and have a great amount of empathy towards other people, since I used to be kind of selfish and controlling. It's still a struggle, but I believe that this was something that I was meant to go through so I could learn these lessons and be a better person. Really, there's nothing, people can say, oh, well, congratulations, or, I mean, maybe not congratulations, but good job, or whatever it is, right? That, whatever people might say, like I wouldn't say anything because I have social issues. And it's just a comment I would stay away from, but not the bots. The bots said this, I'm glad you are learning so much from this experience. This is the whole point of these trials and tribulations. What does a bot know about that, right? An AI bot. It's definitely a gift. It's our trials and tribulations that make us stronger. I'm learning how to not let it control me either. Really, bot. You've been having a lot of panic attacks, have you? Right? It's just... and putting those words in my mouth, I mean, it's really fucked up. So this comment just came up. Blessings and grateful. Thank you, Paul. Edit, a liberal horse helper. And my wife had just listened to this maybe about an hour ago when she was laughing about it. I said, James Wood is a liberal horse helper. Fuck that guy. Sarcastically. Yes, always enjoy listening to you, Paul, even if the subject matter is unsettling. Have a great week. Thanks, you too. Glad you don't mind the darker subjects. I think it's important to talk about them. I mean, just the bot thing, it's kind of fascinating. Great video, unique way of viewing the Jesus story. It feels more accurate than what King James wrote in the Bible. I grew up a Christian church and now do gratefulness meditation. It's the stories, not the book, that matters. That was a great movie. What was a great movie? There's unique videos, Jesus story feels like there's nothing there that's about a movie. That was a great movie. Then there's one right underneath it. What a great video. I love when your words a matching conversation that I'm having with friends and family while I'm watching the video. It's nice to have people who think the same way keep speaking the truth. And I wish more people would speak the truth and stop being afraid. Way to go, bot. It's inspirational words there. Hey, Paul, former USMC grunt here. The Duffel Bag is a satirical military news online publication similar to The Onion or the Babylon Bee. Maz has a hype machine behind him, in part of the Marine Corps because of the demigods of the men like Chester Puller, John Bastone, Archibald Henderson, etc. Basically, once the Corps decides to make a man into a myth, the PR machine begins imprinting that on every jarhead that exits a boot camp depot or OCS. General Mass had a reputation of being pretty close to a teetotaler, but who knows? So I was talking about this with, I don't know what that was from. You kind of remember the Mad Dog Mattis thing, because Trump had a thing with them. Oh, they were comparing Mad Dog Mattis to Trump's secretary that he for Secretary of Defense. You know, the guy who was, getting drunk at Fox News and all the rest of it. And so that's where that comes from. You know, I am ex-military and had a lot of military friends. This is what this guy's writing. I'm not ex-military. I do have some military friends. But, just these are things you can't say. It's putting these words in my mouth. You know, I am ex-military and have a lot of military friends. I have a couple in my family. The military really is an interesting world. I have the same experience as well. The Corps has a way of making myths of these men that really inspires generations of Marines. That's not the point of his comment. I don't think the guy likes Mad Dog Mattis. I guess that's it. So, oh wait, here's one. Dude, when they were doing the TikTok segment on CNN around 26 minutes, the female reporter totally has red horns framed behind her head, and the TikTok symbol even made a little devil's tail. I swear it's on purpose. God bless, Paul. Thanks for the laughs. And the bot said this. It's the mark of the beast. The bot said it's the mark of the beast. I saw it too and was thinking the same thing. I think I pointed that out, but I'm not sure. Grateful for your work, Paul. The YouTube bot segment always cracks me up. It's all over, my friend. Been watching since before that, my friend. Been watching since before that, my friend. Said that twice. It was weird. And, it was about the bots. All right, I think that's enough of these things. But they're really getting goofy. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.